Why are you drafting a quarterback? Why are you trading up to draft a quarterback that doesn't just have bad footwork, has no footwork?
Answer this for me. When I hear words about Pat Mahomes, these are the words I hear. Undisciplined, lacking fundamentals, immature.
Which quarterback do you think is going to have the steepest learning curve once they get into the pros?
I think Patrick Mahomes.
For 7 straight years now, Patrick Mahomes has been the biggest superstar in the National Football League. 3 Super Bowl rings, 2 MVPs, and the Chiefs only had to trade up to the 10th overall spot to get him. And as crazy as it sounds, after days of research, I think I found out why so many teams passed on Mahomes, and the truth may shock you because now that exact reason is exactly why everybody in the NFL fears him. This is why Patrick Mahomes wasn't the #1 overall pick in the 2017 NFL draft.
In the 2017 NFL draft.
Patrick Mahomes was born September 17th, 1995 in Tyler, Texas as the son of a former MLB starting pitcher, Pat. From a young age, it was clear that Patrick Jr. had the athletic potential to follow in his father's footsteps. He excelled at White House High School in Texas, having success in both basketball and his father's preferred sport of baseball, throwing a no-hitter during his senior year. However, it was on the football field that he truly found his purpose with over 4,600 passing yards, 948 rushing yards, and 65 total touchdowns during his senior year. Unsurprisingly, the dynamic playmaker drew plenty of offers from college programs in Texas and eventually committed to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And now Texas Tech football may not carry a lot of big prominence inside of the Big 12 at the time, with the likes of Oklahoma or Texas who were there a couple years ago, but it was the perfect fit for Mahomes. He got to work with head coach Cliff Kingsbury, and together they built one of college football's most explosive offenses. Mahomes spent 3 years as a Red Raider, becoming the starter in his sophomore year. In the 2015 season, he threw for 4,653 yards and 36 touchdowns as Texas Tech went 7-6, including a famous 48-45 win on the road against Texas, their first against the Longhorns in 7 years. The following year, though, Mahomes took everything to the next level. He led the NCAA with 5,052 passing yards and 53 total touchdowns, winning the Sammy Baugh Trophy as the best passer in college football that year. But his college abilities went beyond the numbers in the stat column. The game tape showed off his ability as a superb improviser and clearly one of the most entertaining quarterbacks in the game. And as we've talked about on this channel before, it came in one of the most incredible games of the 2015 season. It was a game where Texas Tech lost to Oklahoma by a ridiculous score of 66-59, going up against future #1 pick Baker Mayfield and falling just short.
Mahomes kept it himself. He's going to take it around left end. Touchdown, Red Raiders. Mahomes, he steps up, throws, and it is, fingertip catch. Touchdown, Red Raiders.
That night in Lubbock, Mahomes put up an incredible 734 yards through the air and 819 total yards, both of which still stand as NCAA records. At the end of that season, though, following a disappointing 5-7 campaign, Mahomes decided to forego his senior year and declare for the 2017 NFL Draft. And while there definitely was interest in his exceptional talent, one of the main reasons people didn't want to draft him was because not everybody believed that all that talent was going to transition well into the NFL.
Why are you drafting a quarterback? Why are you trading up to draft a quarterback that doesn't just have bad footwork, has no footwork?
Pat Mahomes is the anti-Alex Smith. He's the opposite of everything Alex Smith is. What kind of message does that send that Kansas City locker room specifically to Alex Smith? He just watched his his coach, essentially draft someone who is the exact opposite of him.
Mock drafts from that time show more than a few people doubted that Mahomes was NFL ready or even that he ever would be. And now, of course, yes, we all know that the NFL Combine and just all that draft stuff is littered with many wrong projections. But looking at the perceived weaknesses of Mahomes at that time is completely fascinating because now all of those weaknesses are what people look for in a prototypical quarterback coming into the NFL now, with his improvisational game and all of those things that make his game great. Many had him projected in the mid to late first round, with some even having him drop out of the top 32 picks altogether. There were several fears and criticism of Mahomes as a pro quarterback, but most of them centered around the idea that he was a project quarterback whose success at Texas Tech was largely down to the air raid system that he had played in and the offensive-minded head coach he played under. I mean, this Bleacher Report article even mentioned this at length about Mahomes, arguing that he was a risky first rounder and even comparing him to generational busts like Tim Couch and Johnny Manziel. Like, surprisingly enough, this mock draft had him as low as 25th and had little confidence in Mahomes being a pro starter, which was not an unusual take in the spring of 2017. Others simply wondered whether Mahomes would even have the required accuracy or consistency to hold down a starting gig in the NFL. Much of the appeal of Mahomes as a prospect was that exceptional ability to make plays on the run, but more than a few scouts wondered how he might manage a game from the pocket against NFL defenses. And I mean, you can hardly blame NFL franchises for wondering how a small school quarterback with a losing record might be the man to turn their franchise around. So when draft night rolled around in April of 2017, several teams were about to make a mistake that they'd soon live to regret. 9 players were drafted ahead of Patrick Mahomes in a trade from the Kansas City Chiefs that would change their franchise forever. The Cleveland Browns had gone 1-15 the season before and were in dire need of a total rebuild at pretty much every position on the field. And unsurprisingly, they had the #1 overall pick, so usually a team like this would simply start by picking the best quarterback available, but this was deemed by many, including the Browns themselves, to be a draft without a franchise quarterback worthy to take at the #1 overall pick. Instead of a potential reach on a quarterback, they simply chose the best football player on the board in defensive end Myles Garrett out of Texas A&M, which, I mean, in their defense, he has been an absolute hit of a pick on a generational pass rusher. Like, I mean, as we all know, Garrett is a 5-time All-Pro and has been one of the best defensive players in football for years now, winning his first Defensive Player of the Year award in 2023. And unlike some of the other teams that we'll talk about in just a minute, the Browns definitely got this pick right. It's just that they could have had a franchise quarterback instead of an admittedly phenomenal defensive end. In Garrett's first year as a Brown, the team somehow got worse, going 0-16 with DeShone Kizer under center, throwing twice as many interceptions as touchdowns in an all-time dumpster fire of a season. And now, yes, not that Patrick Mahomes would have fixed all of that overnight, but you have to say that he would have at least done better than that, even if Hugh Jackson was the head coach. While the Browns were unconvinced that there was a franchise quarterback available in this draft, the Chicago Bears saw things differently. The Bears are one of the few teams in the NFL that have a quarterback history as bad as Cleveland, but on this night, they made a significant move, trading 2/3 and a 4th with the San Francisco 49ers to move up 1 spot and select their quarterback of the future.
The second pick in the 2017 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Mitchell Trubisky, quarterback, North Carolina.
Hello.
At the time, Trubisky was considered by most the top quarterback in this draft, and the Bears needed a quarterback, having made the decision to move on from Jay Cutler in the offseason. As we all know, though, things never really took off for Trubisky in Chicago. And now look, I mean, he wasn't a total disaster, and his 2018 season in particular did give Chicago fans hope, as the Bears went 12-4 before a heartbreaking loss to the Eagles in the divisional round.
3-yard attempt from the right hash mark. That's impossible.
Like, I mean, hell, the dude even made a Pro Bowl that season, but honestly, that was about as good as it got for him in the Windy City. And due to his just terrible play overall, he was released by the Bears in 2020. Now Trubisky looks set to be pretty much a career backup, currently backing up Josh Allen on the Buffalo Bills. And unfortunately, he'll always be remembered as the guy Chicago drafted instead of Patrick Mahomes. San Francisco was on the clock at #3 and was set to start Brian Hoyer at quarterback in 2017, which would make them ideal candidates to take a quarterback and begin a new era of football in the Bay Area. Or at least you'd think. According to Adam Schefter, the 49ers didn't even consider drafting a quarterback here, as their plan was to pick up Kirk Cousins in free agency the following year. Like, I mean, hell, supposedly the Niners didn't even study Mahomes at all and just ended up taking defensive end Solomon Thomas out of Stanford. Ultimately, Thomas was a bust and the team missed out on a generational quarterback talent. And sadly enough, it's a talent that would go on to beat them in 2 Super Bowls so far. Kyle Shanahan and his team have been one of the league's best since he arrived in California, but they still have yet to win a title under his watch. Like, I mean, honestly, the Niner fans and just Niners in general are probably really wondering what if they did draft Mahomes and what would their team look like if they had drafted him and put him in a Kyle Shanahan scheme. Like, I mean, surely they would have at least won 1 title, if not 2 by now. The next team to pass on Patrick Mahomes, though, was the Jacksonville Jaguars. But why? Well, surprisingly enough, they were still trying to make things work with their own young quarterback, Blake Bortles, and saw their chance to give him a truly truly elite running back in LSU's Leonard Fournette. And I mean, in Jacksonville's defense, this did actually work in the short term. The 2017 Jaguars went all the way to the AFC Championship game with Fournette posting a 1,000-yard season as a rookie, while Bortles threw for nearly 3,700 yards. Jacksonville was minutes from the Super Bowl before falling to Tom Brady and his Patriots in heartbreaking fashion. After that, though, the team pretty much fell apart, and within 3 years, they were the very worst team in football all over again. At number 5 was another team still developing a young quarterback, in this case Marcus Mariota of the Tennessee Titans. And much like the Jaguars, the Titans decided to support their young quarterback with what they had hoped to be an offensive weapon in wide receiver Corey Davis. But safe to say, this one did not work out at all. Davis never cracked 1,000 yards in a season in Tennessee, and the team eventually gave up on the Marcus Mariota experiment during the 2019 season. After benching Mariota, however, the Titans turned their season around with Tannehill under center, making their first championship game in 17 years. But despite having a 17-7 lead, they would ultimately fall short to no one else but Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, another team that has been truly haunted by what could have been. Following the Titans was another team with a gap at quarterback, but much like the Browns, the Jets opted to go for the best available player on the board, and their pick of safety Jamal Adams was undeniably a success, as Adams was a 2-time All-Pro as a Jet. But in his time in New York, Adams was usually only one of very few things to be positive about, and he ended up demanding a trade in 2020 after 3 straight losing seasons. He would end up going to Seattle, and he was an All-Pro there as well, before various injuries completely just derailed his career. The next 2 teams that had to draft pretty much already had well-established quarterbacks and were never ever really likely going to take a quarterback in this situation. Both the Chargers and the Panthers had established their franchise quarterbacks in Phillip Rivers and Cam Newton respectively, and both used this draft to add offensive weapons to help them get back to the playoffs following a down year in 2016. The Chargers went with Mike Williams, who was a success in LA but was never a superstar and never made a Pro Bowl during his time as a Charger, recording nearly 5,000 yards across 7 seasons. The Chargers won just 1 playoff game during his time on the team, with the AFC West division being dominated by who else than Patrick Mahomes. Carolina, on the other hand, made one of the very best picks of this entire draft, taking Christian McCaffrey out of Stanford, who has been one of the league's best running backs since. At the time, McCaffrey was a complete revelation in Carolina, with his very best season coming in 2019, where he recorded both 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in the same year, becoming only the 3rd player in league history to do so. But even as phenomenal as McCaffrey is, he still never won a playoff game while in Carolina. And even within those 3 seasons too, Cam Newton was gone. As we all know, eventually in 2022, the Panthers did trade McCaffrey to San Francisco to begin yet another rebuild, which so far hasn't really exactly gone to plan. And after the Bengals drafted another bust in receiver John Ross, Chiefs GM Brett Veach made the move of his career.
All right, 30 seconds, we'll turn it in.
Don't drag it out.
Okay.
We're good? Let's turn it in.
All right, read it back to me and then let's turn it in.
With the 10th pick in the 2017 NFL Draft,
Card is in.
All right, congratulations.
the Kansas City Chiefs select Patrick Mahomes, the 2nd quarterback.
This surprised many, as the Chiefs already had a Pro Bowl quarterback in Alex Smith, but both Veach and head coach Andy Reid clearly saw the potential in Mahomes and were desperate to secure his services. As it turned out, Reid agreed with those who suggested that he wasn't quite NFL ready, allowing him to sit for the 2017 season with the vet Alex Smith as the starter. This was a great move for Kansas City, but also for Mahomes. As we all know, in a league where new quarterbacks are often thrown into very rough situations in week 1, Mahomes was given a complete year to learn. Without the pressure to start right away, plus the guidance of a veteran quarterback and an elite offensive coach in Andy Reid, Kansas City had built the perfect plan. The Chiefs developed their future star and allowed him to learn the team's offense while building chemistry with 2 future Hall of Famers in Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. The real reason of why Patrick Mahomes wasn't drafted first overall, though, was because many people had doubts about his improvisational skills just transitioning to the NFL, but as we've seen now, that is what makes Patrick Mahomes a great, if not the greatest quarterback to play the sport, with now every quarterback in the NFL and every team trying to find that Mahomes factor, and even having that term kind of coined after Patrick Mahomes, always looking for that trait to extend plays and make plays out of nothing, as we've seen with guys like Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and even CJ Stroud. And as football continues to develop and does continue to grow, we're going to continue to see quarterbacks of more of that trait and of that play style. But as we all do know, in 2018, Kansas City chose to trade Alex Smith and begin the Mahomes era. In his first full season, he threw for over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns on his way to an NFL MVP, instantly validating the Chiefs' decision to trade up 17 places to pick him. The following year, he led the team to their first championship in 50 years, and since then, he's won 2 more championships as well as another MVP, cementing his legacy as one of the generational icons of the game. And the team that has suffered more than any other at the hands of Reid and Mahomes is the team who traded away that 10th overall pick in 2017, the Buffalo Bills. Yes, Mahomes did just lose to them this past week, but Mahomes has dumped the Bills out of the playoffs 3 times, denying their own brilliant quarterback Josh Allen a chance at a title so far at least. Fans of the 9 teams who drafted before Kansas City will have spent 7 years wondering what could have been, but their loss was the Chiefs' gain, and the league has never been the same since. If just one of those teams had seen what Andy Reid, Brett Veach, and company had seen, it would have changed everything. Or had any other team traded up for a small school quarterback with a losing record, who knows how many titles they could have by now. And if you want to see why the Philadelphia Eagles are the best team in the NFC right now, then click this video right here.